the greatest way that corruption happens in practical terms is that there is inflated contracts. So something that you will have spent 1 billion, you will spend 10 billion.
Children don't get access to quality education again because someone took the whole funding. The society don't get maybe good electricity because the money meant for this, they can't get it. So automatically, corruption is an issue when it comes to peace building, a serious one at that.
Hello and welcome to Transparency Files, ICPC's weekly television program. I am your host, Hawasani Garba. Corruption is not just a moral issue, it is a national crisis. It drains public resources, weakens institutions, and slows down development. Every naira diverted from public funds is a classroom not built, a hospital not equipped, and a road left unfinished. The cost of corruption goes beyond money. It erodes public trust, discourages investment, fuels unemployment, and deepens poverty. When corruption thrives, national development suffers. In today's edition, we'll examine the cost of corruption to national development, how it affects infrastructure, education, healthcare, security, and economic growth, and why fighting corruption is essential for Nigeria's future. Also on the program, we bring you updates from our state offices and other exciting segments. Stay with us. But first, let's join Ruth Awodi for this week's anti-corruption highlights.
Welcome to this segment on anti-corruption stories. I am Ruth Awodi. ICPC has arraigned a director from the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing on charges of money laundering and corruption. Mrs. Adiobome Blessing Lere Adams appeared before Honorable Justice M.S. Liman at the Federal High Court in Abuja. The charges filed allege that she illegally received and retained funds from a subordinate which she knew or ought reasonably to have known were the proceeds of corruption. ICPC prosecution team, led by Onwuka Ngozi, contends that Mrs. Lere Adams received various sums of money from her subordinate, Mr. Henry David. It is further alleged that she transferred substantial portions of these illicit funds to her spouse, Mr. Olujimi Lere Adams, and into a Fidelity bank account belonging to her son, Jaffe Joel Lere Adams, despite being aware that the money originated from unlawful activity. Mrs. Lere Adams, represented by her counsel, Barrister Nduka, pleaded not guilty to all charges. Following an application from the defense for bail on liberal terms, Justice Liman granted the defendant bail in the sum of 5 million naira with one surety in the like amount. At the request of the defense counsel and with no objection from the prosecution, the court granted a 72-hour grace period for the defendant to meet the bail conditions. Justice Liman warned that the bail would be revoked if the terms were not satisfied within this time frame. The case has been adjourned for hearing. In a related development, ICPC has arraigned one Obasi Nicholas Sunday before the Federal High Court sitting in Abakaliki, Ebonyi State, over alleged offences bordering on money laundering. The defendant was arraigned before Honorable Justice H.I.O. Oshama of Federal High Court 1, Abakaliki, on a 2-count charge filed by the Commission. Obasi, a staff member of the Office of the Accountant General of Ebonyi State, and a signatory to the Ebonyi State Government Shopping Mall account domiciled with the United Bank for Africa (UBA), is alleged to have engaged in structured cash transactions aimed at evading mandatory reporting requirements. According to the charge, the defendant allegedly made a cash withdrawal totaling 61 million naira from the said government account in August 2020 in 6 tranches of 10 million naira and an additional 1 million naira with the intent to avoid the duty of reporting the transaction. The commission further alleged that the defendant, within the same period, made a cash deposit of 60.9 million naira into the UBA account of one Ikechukwu Obiuku, a contractor to the Ebonyi state government, also in structured installments of 10 million naira and 941,725 naira, with the intent to evade statutory reporting obligations. Upon his arraignment, the defendant pleaded not guilty to both counts. Counsel to ICPC, Mr. Agbili Ezenwa Kingsley, thereafter applied for a date for commencement of trial, while counsel to the defendant, Mr. Michael Ungu, moved for the bail application on behalf of his client, which was not opposed by the prosecution. The matter was thereafter adjourned for the commencement of hearing. That will be all on this segment. Transparency Files continues with Hawa. Stay with us.
Corruption not in my country. Dalali, my business has been going down. I need your help.
Bawahala. I will show you the formula. I use some bad chemical which I mix so produce the drugs which gives me up to 4 times profit. Imagine.
So you are one of the people that is killing millions and millions of Nigerians in this country. Dalali, was it not you last 2 months that was complaining about the fuel scarcity in this country, that the government is corrupt?
Have I killed anybody in your family?
You don't have to kill any of my family members directly. Every Nigerian you kill is my family. Selling of fake drugs, expired drugs, putting drugs in wrong packet, all that are acts of corruption. This is corruption, not in my country. CIA.
Me? Fake drug? Now corruption? Allah kia.
Stop corruption now.
Corruption not in my country.
If you are just tuning in, welcome back to Transparency Files. No nation can develop sustainably when corruption eats deep into its systems. Funds meant for public projects are mismanaged, contracts are inflated, and resources meant for citizens are diverted into public pockets. The result: poor infrastructure, inadequate healthcare services, underfunded schools, weak institutions, and a struggling economy. To better understand how corruption affects national development, we spoke with Dr. Otive Egbuzo, Director of the African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development. Take a listen.
National development happens through a lot of ways. But in a normal country, every country is expected to have a national development plan with clear sectors, with clear objectives or goals, and then with programs that will help you to achieve those goals, and then projects within those programs and clear activities. And then, of course, what do? You allocate resources for those activities that will stimulate economic growth within the country. And then, ultimately, you begin to have a development. But when you have corruption, first is that the greatest way that corruption happens in practical terms is that there is inflated contracts. So something that you will have spent 1 billion, you will spend 10 billion. So what does that mean? It means that the number of kilometers of roads that you will have tarred, the number of hospitals that you will have built, the number of schools that you will have built will no longer be there. So it will reduce possibilities of development where you have corruption, because the money that is required for health, for education, for infrastructure, for agriculture will be diverted to other places. In every society, there are 5 ways to address corruption. Number 1 is internal mechanism by ministries, departments, and agencies, including financial circulars, procurement procedures, monitoring and evaluation, so that without anybody checking, every agency will do things properly, guided by code of ethics, so that corruption does not happen. But if you miss that, then you go to the next level of control, which is legislative oversight. And all agencies in Nigeria, all, have at least one committee of the National Assembly that is oversight. And that oversight covers everything from law to policy to budget to procurement to outcome. So if the committees in the National Assembly are doing their job, they should be able to nip corruption in the board. The third is independent institutions like ICPC and EFCC. If people miss the internal regulations, if they miss the legislative oversight, then they should be caught by ICPC and EFCC. And then the fourth is the media, doing investigative journalism to get those who are corrupt. And then finally, citizens and citizens group. Part of the problem in Nigeria is that these 5 mechanisms are not working well, and we need to strengthen them in order to reduce corruption in Nigeria.
Thank you for staying with us. Corruption increases the cost of governance. When contracts are inflated or abandoned, the government ends up spending more to fix problems that should not have existed in the first place. At the ICPC, the fight against corruption is not just about prosecution. It is about protecting national resources and ensuring they are used for the benefit of all Nigerians. We also spoke to the head of the ICPC Public Sector Engagement Unit, Mrs. Anike Adeshino, on how preventive measures, systems review, and enforcement strategies help safeguard public funds and promote sustainable development. Take a listen.
If you take, for instance, resources of government, the common resources, disbursed to governance at, for instance, the local government level. If somehow along the line, some persons conspire or outrightly commit at the end of the day to, divert such funds to private use, what you find at the end of the day is that governance does not get to the people because someone has decided, or a group of persons have decided to divert public funds to private use. Now, if you look at the ICPC Act, specifically the duties of the ICPC, Section 6, subsection E and F, the commission is mandated to, educate and enlighten the public. Why do we do this? The aim is to foster and mobilize the public. In this public, you have persons in the ministries, departments, and agencies. They need to know. And that's why when the commission rolls out its activities, to mobilize and foster on and against corrupt practices, we're specific and deliberate about reaching public servants in these various MDAs so that we're able to tell them that, look, if you are aware, and that also takes us to section 6A, where we welcome reports, petitions of conspiracy to commit, or outright commission of offenses. So we say to them, okay, if you have such, bring it on, report to us to the right channels, and then we'll activate the necessary action needed, to address such reports. When people don't get away with wrongdoing, it has a way of, activating the senses of others to knowing that you can't eat your cake and have it.
Welcome back. Peace is the foundation of national development, but it cannot thrive when corruption flourishes. Beyond financial laws, corruption weakens institutions, fuels injustice, and creates tensions that threaten stability and social harmony. Mr. Adeniran Michael Timothy will shed more light on how corruption undermines peace and why combating it is important for building a stable, peaceful nation.
Thank you for joining us today on the Opportunity Cost of Corruption segment. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, today we're looking at how peace and corruption can affect one another. And we know that where corruption thrives, peace reduces. And that is not to say that in societies where corruption is low or there's no corruption or corruption is very minimum, they don't have unrest. But in societies where corruption thrives, you know that there's little or no peace.
That's right.
So I want to know the correlation between peace and corruption.
All right, thank you. Now, looking at the two words, it's more like one can do without the other because peace is a general thing. If we look at it, actions from corruption might either lead to good, peaceful community or lead to breakdown of law and order.
Yes.
Now, if we look at it in this instance, the correlation between corruption and peace, in most cases, society that has high level of corruption is prone to have disorder. Because why? People look at either the government's bodies or, in fact, if we look or divert a bit from government, people look at institutions that are in the community, maybe church, mosques, businesses, and the rest. When corruption thrives in these places, automatically peace is at stake. So that's just a little bit instance about the correlation between corruption and peace.
All right, thank you very much. Secondly, how can corruption threaten peace and stability? And we would appreciate it if you can give us some examples.
Imagine scholarship meant for 50 people, and some people have been chosen and they know they've been chosen, but they didn't get it. It was given to someone else, and the news broke out that, okay, this scholarship that was meant for these people was given to somebody who were privileged and they were not on that list. This automatically, we know what these things can cause in most community. It can lead to serious civil unrest, very serious one. So that's just an instance for that.
Okay. There's a certain phrase, there can be no lasting peace without an elimination of corruption. Can you explain that, please?
Yes, let me revert to your first statement where you said in some society where even if there's no corruption, there would be peace. But now the whole thing is this corruption in itself, it's very wide and it has never done any good. Let's put it like that. Corruption has never done any good because once a society is prone to corruption, a lot of things goes wrong because on the long run, people start understanding that this thing is not good for us. This corruption affects our livelihood. It affects what we're doing. Children don't get access to quality education again because someone took the whole funding. The society don't get maybe good electricity because the monuments for these, they can't get it. So automatically, corruption is an issue when it comes to peace building, a serious one at that.
Okay, so finally, we would want you to just give a message, very short message, maybe 20 seconds, to the youth of Nigeria listening to this program right now.
All right, to my fellow young people, I just want to leave you with this word. You would need to understand that your voice counts. There are many situations in most cases where you might even feel like you don't matter, or maybe when you matter a lot is during voting. But during every process, when it comes to governance whatsoever, you should remember that your voice matters and anything you do counts, either for yourself, your family, your society, and your country at large.
I am a Nigerian, a highly cultured race. My culture abhors corruption, and with my integrity, a new Nigeria is possible. I say no to corruption today to build a future for my children. Join me and imbibe the culture of integrity to build a Nigeria of our dreams.
Before we end this week's edition of the program, here's an update on activities from our state offices across the country.
From Benue State comes a report that the ICPC has inaugurated the Anti-Corruption and Transparency Unit of the Federal University Teaching Hospital, Lafia, Nasarawa State, to strengthen integrity and accountability within the institution. In his goodwill message, the ICPC chairman, Dr. Musa Adamu Aliyu, SAN, represented by Barrister Anas Kolo, emphasized that a corrupt society has no future, stressing that the fight against corruption is a collective responsibility requiring the active support of all Nigerians alongside anti-graft agencies. Coming from Akure, the ICPC, in collaboration with the Ondo State government, organized a 3-day workshop on fiscal administrative due process and enhanced internally generated revenue (IGR) for 226 political office holders and officials from the 18 local government councils in the states. Mr. Bello Idris Bakori of the ICPC stated that the Accountability and Corruption Prevention Program for Local Government ACPPLG is designed to strengthen internal control and promote ethical governance. And from Enugu State, the resident anti-corruption commissioner, Mr. Kabir Elelu, received the Honorable Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Enugu State, Barrister Osinachi Austin Nnajieze, on a courtesy visit aimed at strengthening collaboration in the fight against corruption. The Attorney General sought the Commission's support in organizing training programs and workshops for ministry staffs to enhance professionalism and prevent infractions. In his response, the RAC appreciated the visit, described the ministry as a key stakeholder, and highlighting system study, public enlightenment, and education as critical areas for sustained synergy and partnership.
And that brings us to the end of today's edition of Transparency Files. Join us again next week, Friday at 6:30 p.m. on the NTA Network and NTA International. Until then, stay informed, stay accountable, and remain committed to transparency. I am Hawasani Garba saying, bye for now.